everybody. Good Sunday morning. It is the Sunday morning tailgate show live here from Frickers on 741 by the Dayton Mall. I'm Justin Kinner alongside College Football Hall of Famer Keith Byars. And again, we're excited to be hanging out with all of you. Let me make sure that our mics, we hit your volume off on that. Just on that. There we go. Now we're off and rolling. All right, so now we are live on Facebook. We're live on Twitter. We're live on ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. Justin Kinner, Keith Byars with you here again. Let's start over. Good Sunday morning. It's a Sunday morning tailgate show. Keith, good morning. How are you?
Top of the day. This is the second day of the new year, second Sunday of the new year, so I'm feeling good.
Yeah, look, today, this is a fun weekend for one. If we've kicked off, I should say, the NFL playoffs, and we saw the 3 wildcard games yesterday. 3 more big ones on deck today, incling the big one tonight. The Browns.
I got to get the knockout, by the way, but you still got time today.
Yeah, it's good to say. I'm going to get in on the knockout ones today. But I have a problem. I don't know who to pick for any of these. That's like
playoff football.
That means it's a good playoff field. When even last night, when you had the Buccaneers in Washington, by the way, Washington was my upset pick. I say all week, people, man, who's your upset pick? Washington over Tampa. And I said, look, offensively, it's no doubt that the Buccaneers are better, but Washington has the number 2 defense in the NFL. Now, again, that could be padded a little bit just because you play in the NFC East. You played the AFC North, you played the Bengals, you played a lot of bad,
No, but it's not padded in the NFL. Your numbers are what they are.
And I thought they were legit, mainly Chase Young. Big fan of Chase Young's work, and was excited for that, but Tampa comes out on top. But 3 big ones today, plus we're going to get into, of course, tomorrow. The Buckeyes have, a little exhibition game or something, a little meaningless game.
The first game of the new year for them.
So national championship game tomorrow night, Ohio State and Alabama. And we lightly touched on this last week because we are, it's interesting. I'm so glad that it's Alabama that they're facing in the national championship game too, because that's going to make it that much more sweet. It's not that trophy.
I totally agree. Ohio State, Alabama. If you ask most of the people in August who do they want to see, they would choose that. If you said Ohio State and Notre Dame or Alabama and Clemson, they would have went with that as well. But Ohio State and Alabama, I asked a question last week, so who your top 6 Mount Rushmore college football programs. I added 2 instead of 4.
Yep.
And Ohio State is on there and Alabama is on there. And 2 very storied, institutions, both with long traditions. Ohio State's longer, but it's really, really, you couldn't draw it up any better for your college football Monday night national championship game final than to watch Ohio State and Alabama go at it.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a moment. Again, a lot of interesting storylines already heading into this national championship game, and including, there's rumors Ohio State out with the significant position group, or at least out, without some key players at key position groups. But, I'm not trying to make light of the virus, but you got to treat it just like you would any other type of injury or situation that would lead to players being out. You got to play with what you have, and rather than spend all week focusing on who you don't have, you got to go to war with what you do have, and that's what Ohio State's going to have to do tomorrow night against a very good Alabama team. But the one thing is, you can look at the full body of work and numbers and look at the ups and downs for Ohio State's offense throughout the year. But if the offense that showed up against Clemson shows up tomorrow night, I have no clue. I don't know. You really can't try to decipher who has the advantages or position groups because they're dead even. If Ohio State comes out the way they did against Clemson, they're dead even.
Oh. No, if Ohio State plays the way they get against Clemson, they're going to win. They're going to win by, not 21 points, but they're going to win by 10 if they come out with that way. But that's offensively. It takes offense and defense to win the football game. And I've been, going over it all week long, trying to, analyze. And I still keep coming back, to where I started. The first team to 30 is going to win the game. I don't foresee, 30 points is a lot of points in a football game. But a lot of the pundits are saying, both teams will score 40. It's going to be the over-under 70-something, 80 points. The reason I say the first team to 30 is because I think Ohio State has the ability to score slower. To score slower, I mean, they're going to have extended drives, the 6 and 7 minute drives that ends with a touchdown. The quarter's only 15 minutes long, so you're almost talking half the quarter spent on one scoring drive. They do that. That means Alabama's sitting on the bench, offense is on the bench watching Ohio State work. That means Ohio State's defense is getting rested, watching Ohio State offense work. And if you're Alabama's offense getting a little antsy because you're not used to being in the position that you're in. The first quarter is going to set the tone for the game. I mean, I've watched Alabama all season long. Very few games have they played in the first quarter, and they're not up by 14 points. It's 14-0, 21-0, 28-0, and it's still the first quarter because they score so quickly. And, they jump on teams, and now the teams that they play, now they're, on the defense, the whole game, they're playing an uphill battle. Ohio State game, the first quarter of the game is going to set the tone. How the rest of the other 3 quarters are going to be played. If you get out of that first quarter and it's a 3-point or 7-point differential either way, I mean, these next 3 quarters, it's going to be a battle. If Ohio State is down by 14, now they got to win the second quarter to get back to halftime. So you're going to have all these scenarios, but if Ohio State is up by 14 after the first quarter, look for them to really pour it on the second quarter. Ohio State, especially under Ryan Day, have always been a great second quarter team. They finish halves off extremely well. And, and they continue that. That's what hurt Clemson. They saw that second quarter and Ohio State, man, gosh, they didn't punt in the second quarter. Just kept the pressure on and scoring touchdowns. That happens. Alabama is, now they are truly in a dogfight. They haven't really been in a dogfight all year. You can say that the SEC championship game in Florida kept on scoring, but Florida couldn't run the football. They couldn't put enough pressure on Alabama where Alabama really felt, the need to, because they couldn't stop them. Ohio State has the ability to stop Alabama and make them punt. I don't think a lot of punts in the game, but if Alabama punts the ball 4 to 5 times in the game, they have 5 or 6 punts. It doesn't bode well for Alabama. And it really bodes a whole lot better for the Buckeyes. So being a Buckeye fan, you want to see their punter on the field a lot, on Monday night.
Yeah, it's funny. I think it was Urban Meyer last week in it was during the Fox pregame or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, where he was talking about how, in today's college football, you don't really stop teams anymore. Like it's very difficult to, stop a lot of these high-powered offenses like this. And a lot of times your offense is playing some of your defense and how you're managing time and managing clock and keeping the opposing offense off the field at times. And he talked about how when he was coaching Ohio State, he would tell them, hey, look, our goal, if we force them to punt 4 times, if we could force them to punt 4 times, it doesn't matter what. If all 4 punts can come in the fourth quarter, you force your high-powered scoring opponent to punt the ball 4 times, you're going to win this ball game. And literally, so they'd come off he would talk about how they'd come off the field. That's one coach, and then they'd force them to punt. And, when you start breaking it down like that and really just kind of shrinking the game down as opposed to looking at it as 4 full quarter, it's the things you got to do strategically throughout the game. That's how I'm kind of looking at tomorrow night's matchup. Not just for Ohio State. Alabama's going to have that same mindset because everyone's talking about Ohio State. Like, what are they going to have to do to beat Bama? Alabama needs to ask themselves what they got to do to beat Ohio State. These are the 2 best teams in the country. Clemson was in the conversation, but they showed last week they had a lot of flaws. The flaws that they couldn't stop Ohio State, those same flaws were going to hurt them against Alabama. I think the 2 best teams in the country are facing each other in the national championship. So we need to stop asking, man, what does Ohio State got to do to beat Bama? They need to ask themselves the same question.
And we beat up on the college football selection committee a lot, and deservedly so. But this is one time I'll give them credit. They did get 2 of the 4 teams correctly. They have the best 2 teams in the country playing Monday night. And we're all college football fans, especially people who listen to the show. You and I are. And that's all you really want at the end of the day. I want the 2 best teams playing in the championships. Yes, we can debate about the other 2 teams or the other possible, 4 other teams. And we need to expand the field to 6 to 8 to whatever number that is. But one thing we all agree on, when it comes Monday night, we want to make sure that the 2 best teams in the country made the playoffs. So you can debate about the other teams, but you want to make sure that championship game is the 2 best teams in the country. Now, has that always happened in the previous 7 college football playoffs? Now, I don't think so. But this year they got it right. I think the 2 best teams will be playing in the championship. You know, I think the reason why I said I don't think they have it right is because when Ohio State didn't get a chance to go back there after the 2015 season, because of the one loss, they didn't let the Big Ten champion in there.
All right, Justin Kinner, College Football Hall of Famer Keith Byars with you here on this Sunday morning, again live from Frickers on 741 by the Dayton Mall. It's our Sunday morning tailgate show presented by Frickers. We're going to get into today's NFL wildcard matchups coming up here in just a moment. We'll look ahead to tonight's Browns-Steelers matchup. Browns back in the playoffs for the first time in 18 seasons. And, as if their journey to the playoffs hasn't been tough enough, they've only had one practice out on the field as a unit since they clinched their playoff berth last Sunday. So we're going to talk about some of those hurdles for the Browns, as well as take a look at some of the other top matchups in the NFL wildcard round here on this Sunday. But I want to remain here in the world of college football. National championship game again tomorrow night, Ohio State, Alabama. We are Dayton's home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State will kick off at 8 o'clock against Alabama, but we will have coverage beginning at 6:30. So make sure you keep that in mind. We are Dayton's home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. So when you start looking at, this matchup is star power all over the place, Keith. And, we started talking about the offenses and how they really do match up well against one another. They are a mirror image of one another as far as their strengths and weaknesses. And really weaknesses, I don't think really either team has a lot of weaknesses offensively at any spot on the field. I mean, let's start with the quarterbacks for both teams. You see something different. But Mac Jones versus Justin Fields, advantage who?
Justin Fields. Justin Fields has advantage.
Statistically,
well,
people say Mac Jones. I know I
got you saying, but statistics, maybe you heard me say many times, statistics only tell you half the story of a person's ability and what they're doing. The eye test tells the other part of it, and you see the intangibles. And, they both have dynamic receivers. They both read defense extremely well. And the reason why I give the edge to Justin Fields, he can make plays. He can turn a bad play into a good play better than Justin Fields. He can make plays with his feet, with his legs, more so than Mac Jones can. That's the difference. He can. He has more intangibles in his repertoire than Mac Jones, and that's bottom line. That makes him a better quarterback. And Mac Jones, an outstanding quarterback, Heisman finalist. All that. I'm not saying anything bad about it. But if I'm comparing and if I'm picking between the two, I need a quarterback that has a few more things in his toolbox than the other quarterback. And that gives advantage to Justin Fields.
Yeah, we saw a good quarterback matchup in the semifinal matchup. Look, Trevor Lawrence, a lot of the narrative was Ohio State shut him down. They shut everyone else down. Trevor Lawrence threw for 400 yards, and you don't stop quarterbacks like that. Mac Jones is still going to have a big game against Ohio State, but I agree with you for what the quarterbacks bring to the table is let's just say Alabama's defense slows down the pass attack slightly for Justin Fields. You ain't going to slow him down with what he can do with his leg.
No.
If you slow Mac Jones down with what he can do in the air, he's not going to hurt you on the ground the way Justin Fields
want him to hold that ball.
Yeah.
And
the longer he has the ball, and that's good because when Mac Jones releases that ball, there's usually an open receiver down the field when that happens. And again, with Justin Fields, let's just say that secondary for Alabama takes away Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and others. The key to all of this is the fact that Justin Fields can hurt you with his legs. They also have a good run game, which we're going to transition into now.
Right, because hold on one second.
Yep.
When we were doing a comparison between Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, there were, they were just equal.
Yep.
Because, yes, Justin Fields can make plays with his legs, but so could Trevor Lawrence.
He ran for 100 yards on Ohio State's defense in the semifinal last year.
Yes.
Last year.
Yeah. I mean, he went 60-something yards. Mac Jones doesn't have that ability. So I'm being hard, but I'm being fair. So that's why, Justin Fields has a slight edge over Mac Jones in the quarterback comparison angle of it.
No, I'm going to be honest with you. I will never pretend to know when I'm watching an offensive line. I'm very simplistic. I'm like, well, they keep the quarterback from getting hit. That's how I judge what a good offensive line is. But, it's interesting. And when you set in on the show with us from time to time, it's amazing how many Bama fans call into the show, right? Like, it's amazing how many Bama fans listen. They like to infiltrate on the enemy. They like to kind of know how we think,
okay.
I guess. So the other day we were talking about offensive lines, and I right away said, look, Ohio State was viewed as having the best offensive line coming into the season, and I still believe that they have that advantage just from not just a pass rushing or from being able to pass block, but for run blocking as well. And they've definitely come together and gelled over these last couple of weeks. Alabama has the number 1 rated offensive line coming into this matchup, and again, this goes back to big numbers sing and dance. But when you look at the
they're
offensive
not
line,
even. How many common opponents does Ohio State
I
Alabama
don't
have?
think they've had
0.
one. So, yeah, that's what happens when you do conference only. So there's that. But I'm curious, the offensive line, my point is I don't pretend to be an offensive line aficionado. I mean, when I'm watching now, I'm just like, oh, he stood up. He kept it from hitting our quarterback. That's a good offensive line right there.
They didn't call his name for holding today.
Yes.
That's good.
So at this point, I'm like, who has the advantage offensive line? And is it possible some of these can wash out? I think this is a scenario where you have 2 offensive lines who are really good. I think both of these O-lines wash out. When you have O-lines that produce holes for your running backs to dominate the way both teams have all year, and when you are able to protect your quarterbacks, allow your quarterbacks to dominate the way both have done all year, to me, I think this could be one of the few positions where when we're talking about who has the advantage here, I think it's a wash. I think both are the reason that the quarterbacks could be the quarterbacks and the running backs could be the running backs, because by those quarterbacks and running backs having holes in time, that's what allows them to be great. I think it's a wash when you try to talk about who has the better offensive line in this scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. It's really close. Alabama has 2 All-Americans, in there, and they're missing one of their All-Americans, the starting center. So that hurts.
Oh, yeah, remember last week, the center. Remember the
center. Yeah. But the center makes a lot of the line calls, the stunts. And, hopefully Ohio State confuses the backup center, even though, the backups, Ohio State backups, it's really hard to tell because you just seem like it's almost plug and play. Ohio State played without their starting left guard, Harry Miller, last week against Clemson, but it was hard to tell because next man up mentality, he was like waiting for an opportunity. But Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle for Alabama, he does bring the leather. He's a big booty dude, and he's a big man, and he's an awesome, pass blocker, run blocker. But we can bring back, we say that about him, and we have our guys too.
Yep.
I'm trying his name, left right guard for us, All-American.
Davis. No, not Davis. Man, who is the?
Jeez, I'm looking right at him.
I'm all over the place with that too. But
yeah, but our right guard, he's he's an All-American also. So all the things I said about Alex Leatherwood, the same can be said about him. Again, that just balances the offensive line out, and our tackles, Thayer Munford and Nick Petit-Ferre. They were outstanding in the AFC in the AFC conference semifinal. No pressures, no sacks. They were outstanding in our offensive tackle. So it is the offensive line, the bullies up front. It is very equal, and I think I'm gonna give I shouldn't say it's just equal, because I love the way we run the ball and the way we protect, Justin Fields. And
Wyatt Davis, yeah. So
Wyatt Davis.
I said Davis. I was right. There we go.
I was about to say Jones.
Yeah.
See, but we're not calling Wyatt Davis' name for holding and all that kind of stuff. So
that's progress right there.
That's progress.
But all right, Justin.
He's gonna be a first-round pick too. I bet you the NFL scouts know his name quickly.
And there's a lot of teams that need good offensive linemen.
Cincinnati on the phone.
Yeah. We had a reporter on for the Bengals this week from Sports Illustrated, James, a good friend of mine. I know James real well, but he said he took a lot of heat because a couple of his mock draft reports he's put out. He said he looked at the stuff he's hearing. The Bengals really interested in a wide receiver. They want a wide receiver in that first round, and we'll get into that later. But it is interesting when you look at some of the wide receiver talent coming out of this draft. All right, 457-9464. Brandon Williams is back in the studio, so he's working the phones. If you give him a call, you can jump in on the conversation with Keith Byars and I. We're live out here at Frickers on 741 by the Dayton Mall. It's our Sunday morning tailgate show. We're going down position group by position group, trying to see where each of these teams has an advantage. But the thing that Kevin and I kind of noticed throughout the weekend was, again, all the talk is on Alabama and the offense and Najee Harris, and you look at Waddle and you look at Devontae Smith, and you look at everything that they have, and rightfully so. But when you look across the field at Ohio State, I don't think the gap there. I don't know what that gap is. So that's where we're at now. Let's move over to wide receiver because that's really where this gets a little interesting.
Skip the running back. You can come back to running back later.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went quarterback off. Oh, yes, I did. I go out, in, back in. So, whatever. I didn't skip nothing. We're going to get to everything. So wide receiver right now, Devontae Smith. You have Jalen Waddle, who is, right now rumored to, he's practicing. They don't know. He's a game time decision. And then you look at, Michi and some of the others. I mean, you look at even with what their Najee Davis could do with the ball out of the backfield, from a playmaking standpoint, through the air. They have weapons all over the place. And then you have Chris Olave, and you have Garrett Wilson. You have a lot of these guys in Ohio State who are big-time playmakers as well. Who has the advantage wide receiver-wise right now heading into this matchup?
You're taking the tight ends out of that equation when you say receivers?
Receivers, yeah, just receivers.
Okay, just receivers. Zero. It's Devontae Smith is outstanding, deservedly, was a Heisman Trophy winner. But do I wish I had him on my team? Well, I'm greedy. I want all the great players on my team. But I'm not upset he's not on my team because you can hit me with Devontae Smith or I come back with Chris Olave. You hit me with Waddle, who's probably going into the season was the number one receiver, at Alabama. And I come back with Garrett Wilson. Love both Alabama receivers. I love both Ohio State receivers. So, no, and if Ohio State had the opportunity to play six more games, their numbers would be even more gaudier. Their numbers would be able to match. That's why I said don't go by numbers only. Their numbers would be able to match, and we're not as one-sided. We spread the ball around, to more than just those guys. But those guys, talent-wise, and what they bring to the table. Well, it's a wash. Now you go to the third receiver. Alabama has a receiver by the name of his name is Michi.
Yep.
Pretty darn good. But then we have our third receiver, Jamison Williams. Hasn't had as many opportunities as Michi's have, but when he's come through whenever we've needed him. And I haven't even got you the freshman at Ohio State yet. Jackson Smith and Jigba, his progress was stunted from COVID, lack of games. But, we saw a little bit of glimpses that we saw throughout him in the season. We like a lot. Julian Phillum, he's still not quite at that level yet. He had, I think, 4 catches in the Big Ten championship game and 1 drop, but then came back with 4 catches in the opening half. He's got ability. Alabama has that too. So it comes. I think there's playmakers all around. So with Waddle possibly coming back, and I really think that's a distraction. I don't think he's going to play. And if he does play, I don't see him playing more than – I'll be shocked if he played more than 20% of his snaps, because I think he's thinking about his NFL future. He hasn't played since October, and if you're going to play one game, it will be the national championship game. But he's just a distraction to maybe give Ohio State more things to prepare for. And if I'm Alabama, I'll be throwing his name out there too.
Just as a ploy more than anything else. For me, for wide receiver right now, right now, when we're picking position by position, if we pick one position, it doesn't mean that the other one's bad or that the other one's not talented at all. I mean, we've talked about there's star power on both sides. I love Chris Olave and I love Garrett Wilson. I love the playmakers Ohio State has. I just have to give a slight advantage to Alabama, in my opinion, on this. You have the Heisman-winning wide receiver and Devontae Adams, obviously. Then, of course, you are Smith. And so you look at, depth-wise for them, too, and just them being a little older. I think Olave's been around a little bit, but I think that I'm going to give the advantage to Alabama's wide receivers just for playing in these big games more and obviously just being around a little longer. So that would give them a slight
big games.
Playoff game, national championship game.
They haven't played it more. So they haven't played it just as many.
2 years ago they did.
I mean, so
okay, I'm not saying that they're necessarily bad. I'm just saying
Olave is a junior. He's his third year.
Mm-hmm.
He's played in big games in all 3 years, except he didn't play in the college football playoffs as a freshman.
But Olave was also known for showing up only against that one team and that team up north for the first 2 years of his career as well. His 2 biggest games happened to be against that team up north, which is a big game, by the way.
Right, but he's a freshman. We didn't get to hear about him until the Big Ten championship game. Michigan game, Big Ten championship game, and the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
he called big plays in all those games, given the opportunity. So it's really hard. It's really hard, but I agree with you. I mean, I won't disagree with you. We just have a difference of opinion, and it's razor thin. I'm saying even.
It's 2021.
And you're saying
we have a difference of opinion. We gotta trash buildings. We gotta argue. We gotta call each other names. We gotta defend one another. I mean,
you have a razor edge over me. I shouldn't talk about razor edges. I shaved it last night in the shower. I cut my ear. Almost cut my ear off. I thought I was Van Gogh for a minute.
So you didn't hear me right. That's the problem.
That's the problem.
All right, and we close things out here. on the offensive side too. We'll get to tight. Well, let's do tight ends, and we'll close it out with running back. Tight ends for Alabama, Ohio State. For one, we've always had really good tight ends, but you've been complaining all season. Hey, use them. They finally used them last week. It was like
we got 3 touchdowns out of it.
It was like their Jalen Waddle. It was their secret weapon. Like they did the opposite. They didn't talk about their tight ends, right? And then all of a sudden you get 3 touchdowns out of that position that everyone has been screaming for. Hey, we know what you have from a wide receiver standpoint. Take advantage of the big bodies you have playing at tight end. They're not just there to block; they're also there to make plays. And they made 3 big plays against Clemson. And I expect that to be something that not was discovered, but I do think that was a coming out game for that position group for Ohio State. I expect them to have a big game on Monday night. I'm going to give the advantages to Ohio State's tight ends right now just because Alabama strictly uses their wide receivers. I'm not saying they don't use their tight end, but I think Ohio State learned a balance of run game, tight ends, receivers. I think they're the more well-rounded offense from that standpoint heading into this matchup. What do you think?
Well, that's a good question. Now we're going to go back to the raising. I'm going to give Alabama the slight edge because they've had more opportunities to make plays in pressure situations that Ohio State's tight ends has. But Billingsley, the tight end for Alabama, he's really a wide receiver playing tight end. He's built like a wide receiver, just a little heavier. That's why they got him in tight end so he can fake block a few times. But he's a matchup nightmare for us. So Pete Werner is going to have his hands filled between trying to stay with him and trying to stay with Najee Harris. So we're going to have linebackers underneath. They're going to have to be able to run with those receivers. They're going to have to be it. Now for Ohio State, I've been, crying all season, come on, get them out there. And they finally did last week. And part of the secret sauce of Ohio State's running offense is those tight ends, which doesn't show up in the stat book, but they are the secret sauce. Like you heard me say earlier, it's more than numbers. So they don't have the numbers that Alabama's tight ends have, but they block better than Alabama's tight ends. So it's close there, but I'm going to take the slight edge and go with Alabama because they've done it. Their edge goes to them because they've caught passes more throughout the seasons than Ohio State. But our blocking kind of offsets that, but I'll give a slight edge to Alabama in that area.
Yeah, and again, 457-9464 number to call in. We're going to get to your calls coming up here in just a moment, and then we close it out on the offensive side of things for Ohio State, Alabama. Who has the advantage there? Running backs. The Najee Harris again. You've had this coming out onto the. I mean, Trey Sermon just had these breakout games over the last couple of weeks, and the impact that he has had has been felt. I think the one reason I was very taken back, in the Clemson matchup for Ohio State. Why are they not putting pressure on Justin Fields? I know very little about football, but I also know that anytime that Justin Fields has faced pressure, he looks like a completely different quarterback. And I felt like Clemson did not bring the pressure at all. And then after talking with you and after kind of really looking at the game a little bit in a different way, that's because of Trey Sermon. They couldn't blitz. If you brought the pressure, you're going to send 2 or 3 guys right past the main target that's hurting you more so than Justin Fields, and that's Trey Sermon. Trey Sermon has been that big difference maker. Najee Davis, of course, everyone's been talking about him and the impact that he's had in Alabama. Everyone's going to say advantage Alabama at running back, but if this is the Trey Sermon that shows up on Monday night, this could be another wash right there because big picture, overall body of work, of course it's going to be Alabama. But with right now this Trey Sermon, who he is, you can't really talk about the difference. The only advantage you can give to Najee Harris at that point is the fact that he is just.
You've seen him more.
You've seen him more. And he's just as dominant of a playmaker in the passing game as he is in the running game. That maybe you can give him a slight advantage, but overall running. I mean, right now you can't argue that Trey Sermon has had just as much of an impact in Ohio State's path to get here than what Najee Harris has for Alabama.
Yeah, I mean that is real, close. I mean, it was a big difference in the beginning of December between Najee Harris and Trey Sermon. And then here we are at the beginning of January, beginning of a new year, and that gap is real close, razor thin close. And it's in the last 2 games of the season that Trey Sermon has played, he's averaging over 200 yards a game.
Yep.
And he's following the formula that Ohio State followed when they won the national championship in 2014. Ezekiel Elliott averaged over 200 yards the last 3 games of the season: the Big Ten championship, the semifinal, and the final game. Trey Sermon is on that same track. If he runs for 200 yards, 180 yards, 175 yards, Ohio State wins the football game easily. just like they won against Oregon. Easily when Ezekiel ran for 200 yards, that would be the difference maker. Because again, what I said earlier, if Trey Sermon runs for 170 yards, that means they're eating clock. That means Alabama's offense is on the bench watching Ohio State play offense and defense at the same time. It's 1st and 10. It's 2nd and 8. It's 1st and 10. It's 1st and 10 again. It's 2nd and 6. It's 2nd and 5. It's 2nd and 3. That's what you want to hear. You don't want to hear 3rd and 12, 3rd and 15, 3rd and 8. You don't want to hear that all night long.
Just don't be selfish, Tracer. Don't go for 180 yards on 2 90-yard runs. I mean, that's not helping your team. Let's just be clear.
Right.
180 yards on 2 90-yard runs, that is selfish, and that is not helping your
exactly.
team.
The defense always back out there again. Yes.
You are hurting your team at that point. All right, Justin Kinner, Keith Byars with you here live at Frickers. We're going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little NFL playoffs on the other side of the break. And again, we got plenty of college football conversation. To close out the show later on, and as well as the Keith Byars show from noon to 1 tomorrow. And then it'll be carried right on into our show at 3 o'clock. So keep in mind, we'll have plenty of Ohio State talk over the next 24 hours leading into the national championship game tomorrow night, Ohio State, Alabama, as we close out the 2020-2021 season. Hour 2 coming up next, the playoffs. Keith Byars, of course, has had plenty of experience playing in big games in the college level, but the NFL, you've played in quite a few playoff games yourself. Do you remember your very first playoff game, Keith?
I'm a little foggy.
We're gonna talk about Keith Byars.
That was a clue.
We're going to talk about Keith Byars' very first playoff game in his NFL career on the other side, as well as look ahead to tonight's Browns-Steelers matchup, the game that everyone here, more so locally, everyone's excited about this game tonight for a couple different reasons, Keith. It's either you're a Browns fan or you're a non-Browns fan who's enjoying seeing the team succeed that's been so bad for so long, or you hate the Browns and you're just hoping that they get blasted on national television on the Sunday night finale of the Wild Card weekend. So there's a lot of reasons. Browns-Steelers talk next. Don't go anywhere. More of the Sunday morning Tailgate Show live from Frickers next.
2020 has been a hard-hitting year for all of us, but specifically for our veterans. Montgomery County Veterans Service Commission will be holding a new winter coat giveaway for all qualifying veterans on Friday, January the 15th at the Montgomery County Veterans Service Commission, located at 627 Edwin C. Moses Boulevard, 4th floor, East Medical Plaza. For coat qualifying requirements, go to mcvsc.org or call 937-225-4801.
Excuse me. I know you have a 9 o'clock, so I'll keep this short. I'm the business suit in the back of your closet. You wore me nearly every day before your office went, quote, casual. I used to be the CEO of your closet. Now I'm just that one intern no one ever talks to. I always thought you'd circle back with me, get granular, keep me in the pipeline. But nada, nothing. Don't you remember the McKittrick presentation? You spilled coffee on me, and I still looked amazing during the breakout talkback Q&A. So I think it's time for me to move on. I've got a great resume, and I absolutely crush it in interviews, okay? Let's make this a clean break. Shift the paradigm. The only thing I ask is that you think outside the box here and do this. Take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create new jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Does it feel like finding clothes in your fit is impossible? Tired of feeling overwhelmed with options that just aren't right? Let the experts at Stitch Fix do the shopping for you. At Stitch Fix, we make sure each piece is hand-selected for your life. So whether you're staying home or on the go, Stitch Fix has the answer for what to wear. We make it easy to find what works for you. Signing up takes just a few minutes, and styles are delivered directly to your door. Get started today at StitchFix.com. Stitch Fix, your style delivered.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
What's in store this week at Staples?
A great start to the new year.
Give your business a head start on the year. Everything you need to be organized and productive.
Like storage solutions, the latest tech, and office essentials like paper and ink, all at amazing prices.
And now at Staples, earn 40% back in rewards when you buy any 2 ink or toner cartridges. Shop in store or pick up curbside.
Start the year right and save at Staples. Ends 1/9/21. Limit 4. Curbside available in most stores. Visit staples.com/40 in rewards for details.
Liberty Mutual Insurance Company presents. And Doug.
Okay, class, let's bump it up to 9.
Come on, Limu, keep pedaling. We got to build our endurance to let more people know that Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance, so you only pay for what you need.
Pick up the pace, bird legs.
Hey, don't talk to Limu like that.
I'm not, I'm talking to you.
Liberty, 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 liberty. Get a customized quote at libertymutual.com.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzz driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You can kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says I'm a catch more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
All sports. All the time. Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
1, 2, 3.
WING 1410 Dayton. Dayton's ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back. Justin Kinner, Keith Byars with you here. We are live at Frickers on 741 by the Dayton Mall. Happy Sunday. Happy New Year. All that. How many days into January are you still allowed to say Happy New Year before it just becomes annoying?
Mother's King holiday.
Because throughout the week, I'll see people at the stores and they're like, all right, here's your, check or receipt with you in the bag. Oh, in the bag's fine. All right, Happy New Year. I'm like, it's the 9th. It's the 10th now, but it's the 9th. How many days? I mean, I'm always just curious if there's a set unwritten rule about how many days into January you're allowed to say Happy New Year.
And if your friends, hopefully, you've talked to them in the first 2 weeks of the year. If you're talking to them the first time in January and February, hey, man, Happy New Year. I haven't talked to you since last year. Hey, man.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just have a conversation.
So yesterday was a fun day. Got to watch the first day of the playoffs and some good games that were on yesterday. I tell you that much. And what's funny is, Kevin and I earlier in the week, we talked about how narratives take over playoff teams, and narratives are a big deal. And sometimes they're out of players' controls, and sometimes individual players get labeled with things that are team initiated more than anything else. One player that's going to play today that I think has the most pressure. Kevin and I, we ranked all the quarterbacks, Keith, of quarterback facing the most pressure to the least pressure in regards to legacies. Like whether they like it or not, it's not fair to them. It's not fair, right or wrong, that these labels get put on these quarterbacks as far as who they are as competitors. He's a regular season quarterback. Oh, he's a game manager. Oh, yeah, they won, but he didn't do enough. Baltimore, Tennessee, the 1 o'clock kickoff coming up is a big one. Whether we like it or not, I'm a fan of Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson, I put as number one on my list because, he went out in his rookie year. Look, for one, the narrative was the first year, hey, that team was as good as gone, the Baltimore Ravens. In fact, there was a lot of reports of them moving on from John Harbaugh at the end of the season. In fact, they had announced, Keith, if you remember that year, they had announced John Harbaugh was not coming back at the end of the year. That was it. And then Joe Flacco goes down. Lamar comes in. They lose one game the rest of the year, make the playoffs, and boom, they go out in the first round. But man, Lamar was the real deal. Baltimore totally invested in him. They built the entire offense around him, and it set them up for a great regular season last year. He wins MVP again, goes out in the first round of the NFL playoffs. This year, up and down regular season, through no fault of his own. Obviously, with COVID, key games missing, key players missing on a consistent basis. But if Lamar Jackson loses in the first round again, regardless of the quality of the opponent, okay, the Titans are a good quality opponent. They're the ones that knocked him out last year. But I do believe Lamar Jackson faces the most pressure of any quarterback in the playoffs this year, in the first round at least. You got to get that playoff. And Peyton Manning was deemed a guy that was a regular season quarterback for the first, I think, 6-7 years of his career. Just couldn't win the big one. He could win you regular season games. He scored a lot. It was a lot of touchdowns. He moved the ball up. In the playoffs, he clamped up. They labeled him a regular season quarterback. Well, Lamar Jackson, I think, is in danger of that if they don't win this 1 o'clock game coming up later this afternoon. Your thoughts?
Well, man, deja vu all over again. I mean, you took me back, to.
Unfortunately, yeah, your team. I didn't even think about that. No offense. See, I keep forgetting, right?
No, that's okay. It is what it is.
But fair enough. That's the label.
It is. It is. I mean, Randall Cunningham faced that. My first 3 years making the playoff, first 3 times making the playoffs, we lost. I went 0 for 3. And that third game was in 1990. We played in a Washington football team, and we lose the game 21-7. Randall gets benched in the fourth quarter, the second half of the game, and that changed the fate of a lot of our destinations. And Buddy Ryan got fired. They said you guys can't win. You can't win playoff games. You can't win. You're an exciting team. You're a great team, but you're a regular season team. You don't have postseason success. We had lost in 1988 in the Fog Bowl. Lost the previous year, to the Rams in the wild card game, and then we lose again to the Washington team, another division opponent, in the playoffs. So we're 0 for 3, and that changed the fate of a lot of different people. And so it was pressure to win in the playoffs until my fourth time in the playoffs, and I finally won a playoff game. I'm like, man, playoff games are hard to win. You don't take it for granted. It's a long, hard season. So once you get to the playoffs, you don't want to be a one-and-done team. But it happens. Somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to lose. We saw that yesterday. 6 teams made the playoffs. Yesterday, and 3 of them will go on, and 3 of them will stay at home. And that's a heck of a feeling. And so Lamar Jackson is looking for his first playoff win, as a starting quarterback. And what tougher team would you have to get in that first round? He couldn't get the Washington football team, a different conference. Couldn't get the Browns, who hadn't been in the playoffs in 18 years. That would have been a much easier opponent. But now you are facing the Tennessee Titans, who went to the, if I'm not mistaken, AFC Championship game last year. They won, one game away from the Super Bowl. Both of these teams are riding hot streaks into the playoffs. I can't wait till 1 o'clock. It's going to be an outstanding game to watch. I'm just saying, it's probably going to end up being the best game of all 3, that we're going to see today. I think we're going to see 3 outstanding games, but this is probably going to be the best of the 3. And the way, to start it today at 1 o'clock, and I'm looking forward to it. But I think Lamar Jackson has a lot on his shoulders as a quarterback, but I think more pressure is going to be on the Browns and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and again, I guess it's always the question of, this is why you can't eat wings during the commercial break, because I'm struggling right now. Holy smokes. It's really hard, when you're Baker Mayfield. I guess it's your definition of what the pressure is. Look, it's the playoffs, and you've played in the playoffs, and we'll talk about your first playoff game in a moment, but there's a different pressure. There's a different feel come this Sunday versus the previous 17 weeks. But I put Baker, when we ranked our 12 quarterbacks from quarterback facing the most pressure to quarterback facing the least pressure, I put Baker at the bottom of the list. I said, look, he has every excuse imaginable to lose this game. You didn't practice all week. You don't even have your head coach, your main play caller. You have some key position, guys out. And on top of that, I still think he would have been one of the QBs facing the least pressure too, mainly because the big thing about Baker was, the Browns can't get to the playoffs. He'll never lead them to the playoffs. He got to the playoffs. He also got the Steelers the first matchup. If they lose later, we're going to dissect his game, of course, and we're going to, decide, say he's not the guy moving forward. I don't think you could do that after one playoff.
No, but he has the most to gain, as well as not necessarily the most to lose, but he has the most to gain by going into Pittsburgh and winning the playoff game, which they haven't done probably in the history of the franchise.
Yep.
Winning the playoff game in Pittsburgh, let alone winning in Pittsburgh, they haven't done that very often. But so Baker He's got pressure because they want to overcome the stigma. And they've overcome some stigmas this year. You finished better than 500. Hey, you made the playoffs. Can you win a playoff game? They just keep putting obstacles in front of them. So they have a lot to overcome.
That's that term, moving the goalpost, right?
They keep moving it.
Keep moving it. Yeah.
Keep moving it.
Well, remember, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt, but like you talked about how they some stigmas that they ended. Remember the main stigma about Cleveland is they're a joke of an organization. They just find ways to lose. That's a typical
same old Browns.
So then this year, what was the complaint? Oh yeah, they win, but they win ugly. They haven't convinced me of anything. All they do, they win, but they haven't proven anything. I'm like, what? The reason my confidence level on this team turned around this year, Keith, was because the old Cleveland team. You're right. They played in close games, but they find ways to lose. This Cleveland team, they played in some ugly, close ones, but they found ways to win. And that's how you know that the culture changed within that organization. This went from an organization that just didn't believe it could win and found ways to lose to no matter how bad of a day they were having. Think about that game against the Texans. They won 10-7. They had bad outings against teams and still came away with wins. They didn't look good against the Cowboys earlier in the year. Came away with the win. They found ugly ways to win, but that says to me that team knows that they believe they can win games. And if you can believe you can win, that's all that matters right now, because the teams that don't believe they can win, they're the ones that find ways to lose games like the Raiders did against the Jets, like the Bengals after having a 21-point lead against the Colts. Bad teams find ways to lose. Good teams find ways to win. A lot of obstacles in the way of the Browns tonight, but I think that they're going to pick up with where they left off this season, and they're going to find ways to win.
Yeah,
now, even the game against the Jets, they almost found a win.
You don't want to have to keep on going into another offseason of quarter being labeled losers, because now they lose tonight. We'll see, you couldn't beat the real Steelers. You beat the backup team last week. We get you in the playoffs. Y'all don't know nothing
barely
about
beat the backup team, right?
Yeah, and you got to hear that. That's why that's even more pressure, not from without, but within. That's where he has, that pressure. And it's nothing like winning a playoff game, because they are hard to do. Because when you win a playoff game, we're one step closer to the big game. One step closer to the big game. I mean, look at all the great players in the history of the NFL never even made it to the big game. The big game, I mean the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Dan Marino got to the Super Bowl his second year. Never made it back again. If you'd have told Dan Marino he wasn't going back to the Super Bowl, he told you it's crazy. As fine as a quarterback as Ben Roethlisberger has been. How many Super Bowls has he been to? In 16 years? He's been to 2? 2. So they are hard to get to. So what Tom Brady has done in his career.
Russell Wilson, real quick. Russell Wilson, 2 of the first, if his rookie contract, he went to the Super Bowl 2 of the first 4 years, hasn't been back.
Hasn't been back. He sniffed it. He hasn't been to the NFC Championship game, I don't believe. It's hard. And now Russell Wilson's going to the offseason like, man, how much farther away are we from getting there? Because there's only 2 teams going to get there this year. And it's, and you have to appreciate it. But, it's one of those wins. You enjoy it. You high as a kite, but then we got another one. I mean, because I remember when I won my first playoff game, it was in New Orleans.
Yep.
That was an outstanding feeling. So much I had to experience it again. Then as I went on in my career, when I finally got to the Super Bowl, I played 13 years, only made the one Super Bowl. My first Super Bowl was year 11. You play that long, you almost get to the point where you don't know if I'm ever going to get there. Doubt creeps into your mind, but you have to overcome that. And so opportunity is here right now. If you're a Cleveland Browns fan, you're the closest to the Super Bowl as anybody else team other than the teams that played yesterday and already won. You're close to the Super Bowl. Who says it cannot happen in 2021? It can happen, because it cannot happen when you're not in the tournament. You are in the tournament, and it's all hands on deck. They have only had one field practice this week. Nobody's going to remember that if you lose. You win, you get the advance. We won't this time next year. We won't be talking about the Browns that play that still tough game against Steelers. They're too bad they didn't get a chance to practice. Nobody's going to care. You have an opportunity today at 8:00 at Heinz Field. Make the most of it. I want to see the Browns win tonight. I've been on the phone this morning already talking to my cousin in Pittsburgh. They're like, it's a little premature on the call, cuz. I'm like, just, let you know I'm going to be calling you. So I want to see the Browns win.
Works, so you could expect a call.
They're a little nervous, too, in Pittsburgh. Trust me.
I mean, I think that they should be. I think that the reason that a lot of Browns fans are feeling doubt heading into this game with the Steelers is because, it's the Steelers. But if you shrink it down, let's really talk about who the Steelers team is. You have a quarterback who has thrown over 150 more passes than Baker Mayfield, but yet only has 300 more passing yards than Baker Mayfield. Like, the Steelers have relied heavily on Big Ben's arm this year, and it's not like he has barely produced more than the quarterback. They have not relied on his arm as much because of the run game. They don't have a run game. Pittsburgh Steelers do not. They don't have a run game. It's Big Ben or nothing. And I think that when you start looking at how the offenses match up, I mean, the Cleveland Browns have the better overall offense. Their offensive line is better. Their run game is better. I think their overall skilled players are better. And big picture, Big Ben.
And they can shorten the game because they can run the ball.
Take time off the clock. The defense for the Browns. And by the way, yesterday, the Colts drew that up perfectly. They had a chance to win at the end against a very good Buffalo team because the time of possession, the last I checked, they had the ball 7 minutes more than the Bills.
And you kicked the field goal at the end of the half.
Because so
Frank Reich, geez, acting like Philadelphia, going for it.
Yep. And it's interesting because it's like one of those where teams, you got to know your strengths and weaknesses. Cleveland knows that they're without some key pieces, but you got to know your identity. Your identity is you have a quarterback who's capable of making plays, but that's not your identity. Your identity is your run team. Your identity also is, Keith, for the Browns, not a good defensive team. So you need to really rely on who your other identity is, and that's being a run team, and take time off the clock.
Pittsburgh is losing. They're out 3 of their starting linebackers from week 1. Yeah, there's a reason why those guys was back up. Put pressure, run the ball.
Yep.
Play action is there.
And see, I think Cleveland gets a little impatient at times because, they don't look dominant running the ball early in games. But then by the end, you always see the Browns. I promise you, you'll see it tonight. You'll have a big runoff in the fourth quarter. You'll have Nick Chubb or Kareem Hunt have a big 40-plus yard run. They do it every game. It never fails. And it's because they wear you out. I mean, you were a big back in your day. I'm sure you didn't get the big burst early in the first quarter, but by that third or fourth quarter, your big body.
12-round battle.
And that's how the Browns have to do this. It's going to be an ugly game. It's going to be, if they win, it's going to have to be ugly. And if they get blown out, if they lose, it's going to be a blowout because they try to be someone they're not. They're going to try and outduel the Pittsburgh Steelers as opposed to just run it down their throat. That's what I'm concerned about.
And what the Browns have worked on their side, today notwithstanding, you don't have to care about the weather.
Yep.
The running game works in any type of weather: windy, rainy, sunny, snowy.
It travels.
It travels very well. You don't have to worry which direction are they going to kick the ball, which way we want to be in the fourth quarter. You can run the ball. And remember, while you are in the playoffs, how did you get to the playoffs? All those things you just mentioned. That's why they're in the playoffs. And I've always said, and this is true, and it's always been true even before I was born. Good teams make the playoffs. And that's why and every team has strengths, every team has weaknesses. We've highlighted that. What gets you out of the playoffs is the other team is just as good as you because they're a playoff team too. They have the ability to expose your weaknesses more than you got the ability to expose their weaknesses. The playoffs is why you made the playoffs. Your strengths is why you don't advance. Your weaknesses is why you don't advance in the playoffs. So who can expose the other team's weaknesses the most? It showed up in yesterday's game.
Yep.
The reason why the Rams won and the Seahawks lost is because the Seahawks, weaknesses were exposed. They have a big offensive line, but it's not very good. You have Russell Wilson on the run the whole time. That defensive line led by Aaron Donald from the Rams, they controlled the trenches. And, they kept, Russell Wilson, off balance. He couldn't do anything because they couldn't block him up front. Seattle's an outstanding football team. But until they get some road graders out front, they're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere.
Running a place.
Come on, Russell, make a play for us. Make a play. He made a couple plays, but that's not the effective way to win championships.
That's always my complaint. People think, I'm always anti-player getting their money. No, a player can go out and get their money all you want, but you got to be realistic. Any team that has when a team pays, that's why I always think it's so important to go all in the first 4 years when you have a quarterback. I brought up the fact that Russell Wilson hasn't been back to a Super Bowl since the first 4 years in the league in the rookie contract because when they made it there, he's on a rookie deal. You're not paying your quarterback that much. All your money invested into your defense. When it's time to pay your quarterback, all the money invested in the defense, they have to pull from some other key positions to be able to pay that quarterback. And then now you don't have as much money to go and fill some gaps elsewhere. I don't even think that's really much of a hot take. I think you look around the league. I heard on the show the other day, I think it was Garini's show, that no quarterback has played in the Super Bowl that has been top 5 in the top 5 highest paid quarterbacks. Now, Patrick Mahomes is going to have a chance to do that. Technically, if he gets there this year, he will break that, but he's not being paid. I think he's still getting paid the last part of his rookie deal this year, although he has all the guaranteed money on the back end. His money's coming at the back end more so at the front end. So point is
but it's coming.
It's definitely coming. But the teams that have paid their quarterback, it's difficult to win and win like that. That defense is going to be so key. But with that being said,
quick interjection.
Yep.
You hear me talk about secret sauces all the time. That was the secret sauce that Patriots Super Bowl runs.
Tom Brady
was that and cap management.
Yep.
Cap management was the secret sauce. But go ahead, continue.
No, I mean, it's never fair. By the way, that's the thing. Like, people talk about the Patriot way. Is Tom Brady taking less money the Patriot way? That should never be a way that you guilt quarterbacks into taking less money. But sometimes that's the reality of it. But yesterday, I'm watching it. The teams that have defenses are the ones. That's why the Ravens, you should look at them today. The Steelers, that's why I'm worried about them tonight. Because between the two, yes, I like the Browns offense more, but the Browns have the Steelers have a defense. That's what's always going to give them the advantage. The Rams yesterday, everyone, 90% of teams I saw on the pick projector picked the Seahawks to win yesterday. The defense won. Defense wins at this time of year.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's one thing to keep in mind heading into these afternoon matchups, especially. Now, the Bears, they're going to have a defense to slow down the Saints, but I don't think they have enough offensive firepower to outduel Drew Brees. But we'll see. If Drew Brees has an off day, watch the Bears pull off the upset. But that's also why I gave the Washington football team the advantage over Tampa last night, was for that very reason, being the defense. So we'll see.
Yeah, which is, which always you hear me talk about in big games, all games, but especially big games, turnovers.
Yep.
I mean, Russell Wilson and all his dreams is everything. A bubble screen, we get a pick 6. But defensive scores and the Rams, that can be contagious after a while. They've had 4 or 5 games in a row they scored on defense. That gets to be contagious. It always comes down to those plays. So these big games today, the Ravens and Titans, close, evenly matched teams. What's the secret sauce? Who wins turnover battle? Who takes care of the ball, the best. Especially in the Browns and the Steelers. Baker Mayfield, and we've watched him all season long. Baker Mayfield has had games, he's thrown for less than 200 yards, but he has a big goose egg next to the turnover margin. No interceptions, but they won. So, yes, statistically, Baker didn't have a good game. And the quarterbacks and the head coaches in every NFL city get more credit when the team wins and more blame when the team loses. and that's it. And we don't care about your stats as long as the team wins. You always say, be a game manager. So, Baker, be a game manager tonight. Sometimes, like Jim Tressel, punting is the best option. It's okay to punt tonight. Throw the ball away. Make the team drive the field. You do that, they're going to be fine. That Saints in the Bears game, the only way the Bears win, they have to win the turnover battle. They have got to give their quarterback short fields to work with, keep, the Saints off balance. And it's still going to be tough. But that's why I love these big games. You separate truly, the weak from the shaft. I mean, the contenders from the pretenders, because everybody's a contender now. You're in the playoffs. Now, are you going to stay a contender or are you just a pretender? Yep. We saw a pretender last night, with the Washington football team. But they was a contender for money because they won their division. Even though it was 7-9, they won their division. But, you guys are pretending. You're a pretend playoff team. You made the playoff team, but now you've been exposed. You must go home and go back to the drawing board and start all over again. And Tampa moves on. The Colts, they were a contender yesterday. And they very well could have won. But their weaknesses, coaching decision, is the difference of the game. Frank Reich, I think is an outstanding coach. But you got some growing to do. It's hard to make the playoffs. You went 11-5. He had an outstanding season for it to end the way it ended. And Frank Reich showed his inexperience. Because coaches have bad games too. You know, it's 4th and goal from the 4. It ended up with less than 2 minutes to go in the first half, and he decides to go for it because we got momentum. We're we're up. We can go with 17-7 and all this stuff. Yeah, we scored 10 unanswered points with that. No, you kicked the field goal. You give your team. You had a good drive. You don't want it to end on a 4th and 4. If it was 4th and go at the 1, maybe the 2, go for it. If you decide to go for it, but from the 4, you kicked the field goal. And what was the bottom difference of the ball game yesterday? 3 points. They're gonna kick themselves all season. Man, we should have kicked that field goal, man. I know field goals aren't automatic, but still, that was an extra point field goal. I doubt seriously he would have missed it. It'd be 27-27 overtime. You have to manage the big game experience, and so that hurt them. I already talked about the Rams and the Seahawks. The Rams controlled the line of scrimmage. And we always talk about the game is win up from the trenches, but it gets overlooked. It wasn't overlooked when you got Aaron Donald out there. I mean, Troy Aikman, I think he was on something last night when he said,
I was just going to ask you.
Gosh, he said, I've seen a lot of great defensive players, and, I played against a few of them, too. I played against Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White, and I'll tell you, this guy's better. It's like Twitter was trending big time after that comment. I don't know if you called it like that on Twitter. It was trending. I was ready to jump, through my television screen and be like, Troy, have you forgot Thanksgiving Day 1989 when you was a rookie? We put like 12 sacks on your behind.
No, he probably doesn't.
You forget about that?
He probably does not.
Lawrence Taylor, come on, man. But nevertheless, I mean, that was Troy, but Aaron McDonald is as an outstanding player, and he has an ability to go down as one of the all-time greats. But to make that comment, come on. Did you ever see Joe Green play defensive tackle? Mean Joe Green. Did you ever see him play defensive tackle? You ever see Jerome Brown play defensive tackle? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But, that's the era that we live in today. It's what did I saw? The last thing I saw was a great
recency bias.
Yes. And I'm like, don't say that. That's disrespectful. Disrespectful.
All right, Justin Kinner, Keith Byars with you here again. We'll continue to talk about this Browns-Steelers matchup coming up later on tonight. And again, a lot of times when it comes to quarterbacks making their playoff debuts, Baker Mayfield making his playoff debut coming up later on tonight. How did some other former NFL greats? I'm not calling Baker an NFL great, by the way. I'm just saying, let's take a look at to put into perspective why it's not fair to always necessarily label a quarterback after one playoff game, giving them a label for the rest of their careers. But I feel like people are waiting. People have been waiting. People waited forever. They don't like the Browns. They don't like Baker Mayfield because he's cocky, he's arrogant, and when he succeeds, it drives them nuts, and they wait for him to fail. People are tuning in tonight to watch him.
Not to mention, he tried to plant the flag in Ohio State, and it's going to be hard to deliver.
I saw a graphic of him in a Browns uniform planting a playoff flag in the middle of a field, and I was like, oh, that's good. I see that. I can support that flag being planted, so there's that. But we'll be back. We'll take a look at some of the top quarterbacks in the history of the league, how they fared in their playoff debut. We'll also take a look at Keith Byars' debut when he made the NFL playoffs for the first time with the Eagles way back. Well, not way back when, just a few years ago. We'll be nice.
Just way back in.
We'll be back in a moment. Brandon's sending us to break. We'll be back in a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Excuse me. I know you have a 9 o'clock, so I'll keep this short. I'm the business suit in the back of your closet. You wore me nearly every day before your office went, quote, casual. I used to be the CEO of your closet. Now I'm just that one intern no one ever talks to. I always thought you'd circle back with me. Get granular. Keep me in the pipeline. But nada. Nothing. Don't you remember the McKittrick presentation? You spilled coffee on me, and I still looked amazing during the breakout talkback Q&A. So I think it's time for me to move on. I've got a great resume, and I absolutely crush it in interviews, okay? Let's make this a clean break. Shift the paradigm. The only thing I ask is that you think outside the box here and do this. Take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create new jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
The Rocket Mortgage Super Bowl Squares sweepstakes is back. It's the largest official game of Super Bowl Squares ever, with millions of dollars in prizes, and best of all, it's free to enter. every score change, someone wins $50,000. Just enter for free at RocketMortgageSquares.com, and it could be you. Touchdowns, field goals, safeties, extra points. Every single score change will draw one lucky winner from the square to win $50,000. Plus, 2 grand prize winners will win $500,000 they could use toward their dream home. One way to enter, 2 ways to win. See rules and enter for free at RocketMortgageSquares.com. Then tune into the Super Bowl on February 7th to see if you bring home some dough. Rocket Mortgage, official mortgage sponsor of Super Bowl 55.
No purchase necessary. Legal residence of the 50 U.S. and D.C. of age of majority. Ends 2/4/2021, 11:59 p.m. Eastern. Equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states and MLS number 3030. The NFL entities as defined in the official rules is not offered to sponsor this promotion in any way.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzz driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you practice how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely, like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You can kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says I'm a catch more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
My part-time service in the Army National Guard makes it possible for me to be more for the community I call home. My training helps me at work when I lead by example. The Army National Guard has taught me the value of showing respect to those I come in contact with each day. My service also allows me to be there for my community in ways others can't. I help my hometown recover after nature strikes. My service in the Army National Guard allows me to keep my country and those I care about safe from threats. I also work with a network of professionals that help me succeed and accomplish the mission. Plus, the Army National Guard education benefits make getting a higher education a reality. Being an Army National Guard soldier makes living and serving in my community more rewarding every day. Learn how you too can live and serve part-time, close to home by visiting NationalGuard.com.
Sponsored by the Ohio Army National Guard. Aired by the Ohio Association of Broadcasters and this station.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Guns it long down the right side, ball in the air toward the end zone, and that ball is going to be the Buckeyes get it. Tyvis Powell, he goes racing up and is tackled at the 30-yard line, and the king of the SEC has fallen. This is the voice of the Buckeyes, Paul Keels. Join us Monday night as Ohio State will take on Alabama for the national championship. We'll be on the air beginning at 6:30 p.m. with the AEP Energy Buckeye pregame show from Learfield IMG College on the Ohio State Sports Network, presented by the James.
All sports, all the time. This is 1410 ESPN Radio.
Welcome back. Justin Kinner, Keith Byars with you here on this Sunday morning, and I hope everyone's had a great weekend and enjoyed the first 3 games of the NFL wildcard playoffs yesterday. Now, keep in mind, we got a lot of big games coming up for you later on today. In fact, not later on today. In fact, what time is it, Keith? 12:36, 20 minutes. The Ravens and the Titans kick off, and that'll be the first game of of the triple header NFL wildcard weekend as it wraps up. The Bears and the Saints, they will kick off at 4:40, and then the main event, the Browns and the Steelers. Sunday Night Football, 8:15 later on. We'll see Justin Kinner and Keith Byars to get back into here, talking all things NFL playoffs as we head into these matchups. As we talked about Lamar Jackson, a lot of pressure on him. The narrative is, hey, he can't win in the playoffs, which is, I hate when we do that. Like, sometimes I think we use the MVP award for guys to classify them as singular greatest players of all time, even though I think the MVP is more of a team award. And then we also do then in playoff wins, which is a team achievement, we single out athletes, and we blame Lamar if they don't win. Like, for instance, Keith, last year, Lamar had a hell of a game in the playoffs last year, and they lost. But, Lamar's only a regular season quarterback. So that's why I hate that narrative. But that's why I said earlier, whether I think it's fair or not, those narratives exist. And that's why when we talk about the pressures these quarterbacks face, I talk about it from that perspective. That's the context base for how a lot of these narratives form. And I don't think it's necessarily right. And I think what also hurts against Lamar Jackson is the fact that you have guys like Patrick Mahomes who come into the league and boom, just take off. Is it fair for every young quarterback now to come into the league to win a Super Bowl in their first 3 years? I don't think that's fair. But you look at Lamar, or you look at Russell Wilson, he did it, right? Like you see Patrick Mahomes, he did it. So I think sometimes we're moving the goalposts as far as what is a fair expectation for quarterbacks coming in. Joe Burrow's debut in the league this year would have been classified as one of the all-time greats 10 years ago. Now it's just like, he was good, but the team didn't really improve. Not his fault.
Right.
But the expectation is, hey, you're a rookie coming in. You got to turn things around. Trevor Lawrence, if he gets taken by the Jaguars or Justin Fields, they're expected to be better next year. There's pressure to win games. That whole thing of, they get 2 to 3 years to be eased into the – no, it's unfortunately, whether we like it or not to win Super Bowls year one, but you're expected to at least double your team's win total. You're supposed to be that good coming in, right or wrong.
Well,
I'm not really asking you a question. It's whether it's right or wrong. It
right.
Seems to be what it is.
And that's one of those deals where, you have to go with those. You have to trust yourself, have belief. I'm going to go old school for you for a minute. Prior to the Buffalo Bills losing, being labeled losers.
There's a good example right there.
4 straight Super Bowls. No, they can't win them. Do you know how hard it is to get to 4 Super Bowls? It is 4 in a row. I would love to have that opportunity, to play in 4 straight Super Bowls. Well, you would have lost them. I would have loved the opportunity to play in them. You can't lose them unless you play.
For instance, you played in 1 Super Bowl and you lost. You'll take that Super Bowl and a loss over never playing in one.
Over never
right?
playing it. Absolutely. That's absolutely. Oh, the Chicken Noodle Super's here. Yay. But then, everybody always wants to label you. Usually a lot of labels are for bad. And that's just the society that we live in. I'm going to go even older school. At one time, he was statistically, the greatest quarterback to ever play, was Fran Tarkenton. Had all kind of records, regular season records and stuff. And he even had postseason success. He just didn't win the Super Bowl. His team didn't win the Super Bowl because the better team beat his team in the Super Bowl. But the Vikings that got to the Super Bowl, I think 3 or 4 times, they lost to the Raiders. They lost to the Steelers. They lost to the Dolphins. But they got to the Super Bowl. And then people, that wasn't good enough. But a whole lot of other players and other teams at that time would have loved to have been in the Minnesota Vikings shoes to have an opportunity to play in some of those early Super Bowls. But they lost to outstanding teams. That doesn't make them losers. Fran Tarkenton didn't have to live. He had to hear, to some degree, you can't win the big one. Well, look who I lost to. And even today, Fran Tarkenton's an old man.
Yeah.
And, he still hears some of that nonsense, but who wouldn't trade places with Fran Tarkenton, at the time? So for Lamar Jackson hearing this, well, you've been in the playoffs and you didn't win the big one. Man, this is 3rd year in the playoffs. 3rd year in the league, 3rd year in the playoffs. Wow. I would have loved to have been in the playoffs 3 times for my 3rd year in the league. And a whole lot of other players would switch places. So I don't think we ought to let the narrative go there, but unfortunately it's going to go there no matter what you and I do. We just got to do one thing, at a time and try to keep things in perspective. When you make the playoffs, enjoy it, and now let's win. How far away are the Cincinnati Bengals from the playoffs? at least 12 months. But we will see. I mean, this time next year, if the Bengals are in the playoffs, we're going to be like, man, who saw that happening? Who would have thought the Bengals would be in the playoffs? But if they make the playoffs, then, okay, Joe Burrows, will he really be the guy? He knew in Joe, we believe and trust. And if they play in the playoffs this time next year, lose, would Joe Burrows be labeled a regular season quarterback? The narrative was it was only his first time. The stories are already written. And I hate that. Instead of let's enjoy it for what it is. Yes, history plays a part of it, but history ain't gonna walk into the building today, in Heinz Field. The steel curtain from the 70s is not going to be there. There are going to be pictures of them, but they are Joe Green and those guys are not, Jack Lambert are not walking on the field. You're playing the 2020 edition of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bernie Kosar, Brian Sipe, Greg Pruitt, Paul Warfield, Jim Brown. None of those guys are walking in the building and putting on the uniform of Cleveland. The 2020, 2021 Cleveland Browns are going to be there representing history, but you're playing in the present. That's going to win the football game. The same could be said on Monday night. This year's edition of the Ohio State Buckeyes, this year's edition of the Alabama Crimson Tide. What they both bring in, is that 12th man on the field with them. They bring in history. They're playing for history. That's what it's about. That's what makes this time of the year so special, because you're not only just playing for yourself, you're not only playing for each other, you're playing for history that we're going to talk about the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. That's what makes it special. Remember, you asked me earlier about my first playoff game, and I realized that at the time. I'll be playing for history. That was 1998. I said I was a little foggy because it was very false. We were playing in Chicago. I'm with the Philadelphia Eagles and the infamous Fog Bowl. I mean, you couldn't even watch it on television. All you saw was a white screen on your television, and it was the same way being there as a player on the field. And I believe that was probably my best chance, of winning the Super Bowl. That year. I still believe to this day, if that game was been delayed or postponed, a few hours, we would win that game and go on to win the Super Bowl, because we'd have played against the Bengals, and they don't know how to win big games. But that would have been a Super Bowl for me, and that's one of the regrets. I shouldn't say regret, but it's something I will always stick with me all the days of my life. Man, woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda. We could have just had a delay and played that game under normal circumstances. Without the fall. Some things you'll never know.
And there's teams today that are playing that there's a lot of quarterbacks or running backs or receivers who are saying, man, we got a good team. We made the playoffs. Man, if we're good now, we're only going to continue to get better. You're not guaranteed to get better moving forward. I mean, so much can happen. I mean,
what a difference a year makes.
What a difference a year definitely makes. That is for sure. And again, the fall game you're talking about, your NFL playoff debut, the Bears win 20-12 back in 1988. So it's. I mean, Randall Cunningham threw for 400+ yards.
I caught 100 yards of passes myself. I caught 9 for 100 and something. In the fall. Yep. How can you see the ball?
And seeing right away, I mean, Keith Byars, 7 carries, 34 yards. Oh, Keith had a bad day. Now, he had other things on his mind. He was being a wide receiver, So, that's, yourself 9 catches, 103 yards. Keith Jackson had 7 catches for 142 yards.
That was when we could see.
My goodness. And, see, you're better than Chris Carter. Chris Carter only had 1 catch for 17 yards, so there you go. Oh, man, that Bears team, too, had Mike Tomczak on it.
Yeah, guess who else? Gibson had a big interception in that game. Maurice Douglas.
There you go.
Wait, Mo Douglas. I still tease Maurice. Hey, man, y'all had 13 people on the field.
Yeah. And see, that game, Mike Tomczak completed 10 of his 20 passes, 172 yards. He threw a touchdown, but he had 3 picks. One of those, there you go.
Yeah.
So that's all she wrote. All right, folks, on the other side of the break, we will give you our picks for the final 3 NFL playoff games as we wrap up this wild card weekend. Justin Kinner, College Football Hall of Famer Keith Byars. We'll be back with you in just a moment.
You have empty office space to fill or home office to create. You know what you need. You know what you'd like. But you also have a pretty good idea after you've shopped around the usual places what you need and what you like might not happen. Well, then you haven't been to Charles Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. Nobody has their selection. Nobody has their discounts. And every week there's something new. If you need office furniture, Larrick's Warehouse Outlet can sell it to you for half the price and below manufacturer's selected prices. Half price and below on hundreds of items. Selection from budget to the best. Really, desks from $50 to $5,000. Filing cabinets from $25 to $500. Before you go anywhere else, do yourself a favor and come to Larrick's Warehouse Outlet. With 25,000 square feet of selection, you're not going to go anywhere else. Larrick's Warehouse Outlet at 23 McOil Avenue, Dayton. Open Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. Larrick's, continuing the tradition.
Fever is a leading symptom of the coronavirus, so take your temperature twice a day with the Exergen Temporal Scanner. It's quick and easy to use, and its accuracy is backed by more than 80 clinical studies. Have your family start and end their day with the only home thermometer used and recommended by hospitals, doctors, and nurses. Your family can take their temperatures in seconds to know where they stand in the fight against COVID-19. Protect your family from the spread of this deadly disease and stay safe with Exergen.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzz driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You can kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says I'm a catch more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
2020 has been a hard-hitting year for all of us, but specifically for our veterans. Montgomery County Veterans Service Commission will be holding a new winter coat giveaway for all qualifying veterans on Friday, January the 15th at the Montgomery County Veterans Service Commission, located at 627 Edwin C. Moses Boulevard, 4th floor, East Medical Plaza. For coat qualifying requirements, go to mcvsc.org or call 937-225-4801.
You wanted to see me?
Yes, please, have a seat. So here's the thing. When this company brought you on, we took a chance on you. You didn't have that 4-year college degree we typically look for.
Right.
But we gave you a shot anyway. And since then, you've worked incredibly hard and given it your all.
Thanks.
You've been an important asset to the team, but I don't think you can be an intern here anymore. We want to hire you.
You're serious?
Absolutely.
Find your next great employee. Introduce yourself to the grads of life. Who are they? Talent worth knowing about. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or even mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
I won't let you down.
I know.
Don't miss out on a resource many innovative companies have already discovered. Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Hey everybody, it's Stephen A. Smith, and everyone knows my feelings on Cowboys fans. But really, Justin Kinner, you're a Cowboys fan and a Browns fan? Good Lord have mercy. I don't know what the hell to do with y'all. I really don't.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. Weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio. College football playoffs, Browns, Bengals, Buckeyes, and more. Catch the Keith Byars Show Mondays at noon on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Everybody, everybody. We welcome you back. Justin Kinner, Keith Byars with you here live on this Sunday morning, live from Frickers on 741 by the Dayton Mall. It's our Sunday morning tailgate show presented by Frickers. Ohio State, Alabama National Championship game tomorrow night, 8 o'clock to kickoff, 6:30. The network pregame will begin. But, of course, you can catch all of our local coverage beginning for the game starting at noon tomorrow. The Keith Byars show from noon to 1. Make sure you hang out with the former Buckeye great, college football Hall of Famer. Of course, he's right now to my left, and he'll be hanging out with you tomorrow from noon to 1, taking your calls, getting you set for Ohio State, Alabama National Championship game. And that local coverage will be handed off right into our show tomorrow from 3 to 6, the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash. So be keeping that in mind. Big game tomorrow night for the Ohio State Buckeyes. But the big games today in the NFL playoffs. We've talked about legacies and how the playoffs alter legacies and talking points for certain players. And, today, we talked about how that can impact Lamar Jackson. He's going to be playing in the 1 o'clock game against the Titans coming up. Derrick Henry and the Titans, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. That's going to be a fun matchup. But Baker Mayfield later tonight, Browns and Steelers. Baker Mayfield making his NFL playoff debut. And the one thing that's interesting about that is I feel like people are ready to pounce on him if they don't beat the Steelers tonight to label, see, you can't win with Baker Mayfield. We were told a year ago you can't win and make the playoffs with Baker Mayfield. They win 11 games this year. They're in the playoffs, and now we're moving the goalposts once again. I want to take a look at some quarterbacks and how they fared in their NFL playoff debut to kind of give you an example of you can't sit there and judge a quarterback off of a performance in their very first playoff game, which you can argue, Keith, this is the highest pressured game the Baker's ever played in since being drafted into the NFL.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
It's your first playoff game. It doesn't get any bigger than that. Peyton Manning lost his very first playoff game 19-16. He threw for 227 yards. He didn't even throw a touchdown, threw no interceptions. They lost. You keep going down the list.
Who beat them? The opponent didn't tell you.
Doesn't say.
Okay, never mind.
Drew Brees lost his NFL playoff debut. Big Ben won his, so he's irrelevant in this conversation. But John Elway,
team won.
Yeah, his team won. John Elway lost his NFL playoff debut. I think he went on to have a pretty good career. I'll leave that name out, Keith, just because yeah. But nope, I'll leave it out.
Go ahead. He said Troy Aikman.
Troy Aikman, of course, lost his playoff debut. He goes on to win 3 Super Bowls. Continuing to go on down the list here of guys who won their first or who lost their first one. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is the most interesting of them all. I mean, he lost his very first playoff game. And, of course, but that's the deal. Aaron Rodgers, he completed 28 of 42 passes for 423 yards and 4 touchdowns in his NFL playoff debut. Keith, they still lost.
Yeah.
They still lost. So that's the thing. Like, we're going to, I'm not going to put Matt Ryan in that conversation, but the point is that we've seen former quarterback greats or quarterback greats who have lost their very first playoff game, and it means nothing. Lamar Jackson lost his first one. Does that take away his MVP? Lost first 2. Will he lose his first 3? We'll find that out. But him losing his first 3 doesn't make him any less special of a player. Obviously, that's going to be the next growing, the next step that they.
Yeah, because Randall Cunningham lost his first 2, and he went on and lost the first 3. But the year he lost his third one in a row, he was the league MVP.
Yep.
So
it is what it is. So,
but that's the narrative. I mean, and you've heard me say for years now, I hate statistics when they talk about quarterbacks' wins and losses. It's the team that wins, the team that loses. You zone in on certain players, but quarterbacks don't play both ways. They play quarterback. They don't play defense. Teams win. That's, who goes on and do that. I mean, Terry Bradshaw, his team, he won his first playoff game. Then, they lost, but then they went on and win, 4 Super Bowls in 5 years or 6 years. But you look at perception of Terry Bradshaw, he's a Hall of Famer. He's one of the all-time greats because he's a Hall of Famer. But in reality, he played on a great team. If he would, any of those Super Bowl wins you ever recall, Bradshaw just lighting defenses up the whole game. Those are defensive-oriented wins for the most part. But I think that, the history is always written by the victors, but the story should be told as it unfolds, not pre-told. Let the story tell their own story, but like you said, they already got their stories written about Baker Mayfield tonight. If they lose, this is what we're going to say. And if they win, we're going to move the goalposts again.
If they win, Big Ben's career's over. They don't even have a good run game. They lost to the Bengals. They lost to Washington. They lost to Betsy. Yeah, so you're dead if you do, if you don't.
Let the story tell itself. You tell the story of the 2020 season when it's all over. Like, you can write the epithet now for the Cincinnati Bengals. Their season is over with. Cleveland is still playing. Don't end their season tonight. End it when the clock is 0-0 and they have less points than their opponent. Then their season will be over. Then you sit back, take a deep breath. Don't write it with emotion. You don't write it that night. You take a couple of days and then you digest and talk about the good, bad, or different of what happened over the course of the 2020 season. Don't pre-write the story. And so many writers and reporters, they do that, because if it bleeds, it leads. And most of the time, the stories are told from a negative point of view and instead of a positive, a team on the rise. If the Browns even get blown out tonight, my story would be like, it hurts, it's not the same. But look where you were a year ago. Look where you were 3 years ago. Are you trending in the right direction? And the answer is yes.
Yeah, they the narrative is, they lost to the Steelers. Now the narrative is they got to the playoffs for the first time in 18 years, and that is all that matters. All right, as we close the show out here on this Sunday morning, NFL wildcard weekend about to wrap up. Game one again against the Ravens and the Titans. Keith, that's the first one. Baltimore, 3.5-point favorites. Baltimore Titans. Your pick for this matchup is who?
Oh boy. I talked to my guy earlier this week, J.K. Dobbins. I got to go with the Buckeye. I'm going with the Ravens. I'm going to ride him. J.K. I told J.K. you're my guy.
You got a Buckeye on the Ravens side. I'm going to go with the Buckeye as well, but I'm going to go with Mike Vrabel. I think that the Titans get this. I think that Derrick Henry, having that strong run game, and he's not just a strong run game. I mean, he ran for 2,000 yards, Keith. I mean, he's not just your typical running back. I mean, 2,027 yards, 17 touchdowns, and he did it on 378 carries. We always talk about the significance of running game and defense being what wins you games in the playoffs. Now, the Ravens, they have the defense in the run game, but I think that the Titans really right now are rolling, and I think you're going to see them pick up with where they left off. 11-5 on the regular season. I think that they get a win over the Ravens today, but I wouldn't be surprised. Both of these teams, whoever wins this, there won't be that, oh my God, I can't believe that team won. These two teams are pretty evenly matched, two different styles of teams, but evenly matched as far as what they're able to do and how they're going to do it. So I'm going to pick the Titans in this one, in a close one.
Okay, I won't argue. Good game, though. I'm going to look forward to it.
The Bears and Mitch Trubisky going up against the New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees, I believe Alvin Kamara is playing, the last I heard.
Yep, he's playing.
So he's playing. No Michael Thomas. Last I checked, no Michael Thomas.
He's playing.
So he is playing for the first time in over a month. So that's big for the Saints.
Mike.
I'm picking the Saints either one. I'm not going to try and over-dissect this one. I think this is an easy one unless all of a sudden the playoff bug bites the Saints in the butt, which it has in years past. But I think the Saints, this is one of their easier first-round matchups that they've had in a while. I think the Saints get this one over the Bears.
It's never easy in the playoffs. They're only easy after the fact. But you have to prepare, and you don't assume. They had a tough game in Chicago earlier this season. Mm-hmm. So the Bears is not going to be easy out. First time the Bears been in the playoffs in a few years, so I'm not going to be, part of that bandwagon and go, the Bears. Sounds good, but I'm not going with the Bears to win. I got to go with you, New Orleans.
All right, and then the last but not least, the Browns and the Steelers. Sunday night football game on NBC, 8:15 to kick off. Browns-Steelers. Pittsburgh is 6-point favorite. I gave my score prediction on the show earlier this week. I picked Cleveland winning a close one. I'm going to go with my gut here, and I got a big gut. I'm going with my gut. 27-24, Browns over the Steelers. Not only do the Browns end their playoff drought of 18 years, they end it in dramatic fashion by getting a win over their hated rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And to do it on the road, regardless of fans or no fans, I'm picking. So much has gone wrong for Cleveland this week that I think that there's no better way to cap it off than getting a win over your hated rival, the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right. I'm not going to go with my gut, and I'm not even going to go with my head because my head to tell me Pittsburgh, but I hate the Steelers. They know that. I've always have. So I'm going with my heart. I'm going with my heart. Come on, Cleveland, win the game. So I'm just a little bit, not my head, not my gut, but my heart. I want to see the Browns win the game.
No Kevin Stefanski, from your time in the NFL, obviously your head coach is very important, but your head coach is very important from a big picture standpoint. I'm not saying they're not important on game day, Keith, but with the Browns being without Kevin Stefanski today, you being a former player, think back to your time in the league. If your head coach had to be out, how drastically would that change your team's approach and even your mental approach to a game? How big of a deal is that?
It is a big deal. I mean, even though majority of the coaches I played for, they didn't call plays, but they had some influence on the play. So that's the difference in their leadership. You got to look them in the eye when you come to the sideline. See them in the huddle. See them around the locker room.
You play for some big personalities.
So you're missing that link. And so if he's the leader who we think he is, yes, that's going to be a hole to avoid. But great leaders, have great leaders around them to pick up the slack. Look at Ohio State this year with no Ryan Day. Coach Larry Johnson stood in and, carried the weight and led the team to victory. So Cleveland's going to need that, today, and I'm sure, they haven't been on the field, but they've been in meetings, Zoom meetings and whatnot. What would Coach Duransky do in this situation? And hopefully they went through those situations, a la yesterday, the Colts. If it's 4th and 4, what are we going to do? Are we going to kick a field goal or are we going to go for it? Have those discussions. What would it be our 2-point play when we absolutely got to have a 2-point play? What will it be? So that's all about your preparation. And then today is all about application. You've already prepared for 3rd and short, 3rd and long. That's what all this week was about. Now it's the day to go out here, and the hard work is done.
Yep.
It's done. Now let's go out here and let's apply. Let's go impose our will on the opponent before they can impose their will on us. That's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, we had Brian Billick on earlier in the week, who former coach of the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl back in 2003, I believe. Did you know he's from Dayton, by the way?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's from his military family, so he's born in Dayton, but he didn't really grow up here. But he lives in Columbus now. Nice guy.
Really lives in Columbus.
Yeah, his daughter goes to Ohio State, so he's a big Buckeye fan too. So it was a fun conversation to have with him. Even though he still said his gut tells him Bama will win. So he was good up until that final point of the conversation. But when I asked him how big of a deal it is, Kevin Stefanski being out, he said of course, him being a former head coach, he's always going to say it's a big deal because he likes to think as a coach it's a big deal when you're not there. He said, but there's a difference between not having your head coach there on game day and then not having the right head coach at all. So Kevin Stefanski's thumbprint's going to be all over this game regardless. I mean, you still have Kevin Stefanski for the game prep throughout the week. He may not be there on game day, but he talked about the importance of him preaching to his team. He said he remembers the second year as a full-time head coach in the league. They're going up against Mike Shanahan and the Broncos. And he said, look, he goes, so much is being made about the head coaching matchup. He goes, if it's me versus Shanahan, it's only my second year in the league. He goes, we're going to get our ass kicked. He goes, it's not about me. He goes, we're going to prep you throughout the week. He goes, but we never cross those white lines. You do. So we're going to get you prepared. We're going to do what we do. But ultimately, it's up to the players to go and get this thing. And that's basically what it's going to have to come down to for Cleveland later tonight. So I'm excited about that match.
He's oversimplifying it, but it does matter.
Yeah.
It does matter. You want to be able to have a coach that can match wits on the run with the coach across the sideline. And Mike Tomlin is one of the finest coaches in the National Football League. So you better hope it doesn't come down to a coaching decision because the Pittsburgh Steelers will win that every time.
Absolutely. All right, folks, that wraps it up for us here. Do keep in mind if the Cleveland Browns win tonight against the Steelers, well, they get a big reward for that, Keith, because then they get the Chiefs out next. So it's like, welcome to playoff football.
Okay, that's what you want.
Welcome to playoff football. All right, the Keith Byars Show tomorrow from noon to 1. I'll talk all things Ohio State, Alabama National Championship. Same thing in our show in the afternoon, and hopefully responding and reacting to the Browns win in the playoffs. But 27-24, my score prediction, the Browns over the Steelers. That wraps it up. Brandon, thank you so much back in the studio for holding it down. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Everyone that's out here at Franker's enjoying a quick lunch before the playoffs begin. Until next week, it's been our Sunday morning tailgate show presented by Franker's, live from Franker's on 1410 ESPN Radio.
It's the Justin Kinner Show with Kev Nash.
Justin, you're awesome, baby.
Right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
My name is Kate Courtney, and this is my new show, Can You Survive This Podcast? I'll be drawing on my years as a former Navy SEAL platoon commander